something years ago. Those cold nights in December, and the sound of the falling snow, the fireplace warming us, the VHS movie box, your old broke down touring bus, and not a single cloud in the sky. If I could go back in time, I'd pack my bags right now. If I could play back, rewind, I wouldn't think twice. When you and me were porous stirred, and all we had was time.
Woo! It is the 20th of February and 60 degrees in Connecticut. This is ridiculous. We got 8 inches of snow 2 days ago. I've been cooped up in the office all day just doing paperwork and emails and phone calls. I was looking for any excuse to get out of the house, and I thought, what a great opportunity to test out all the features of this, the new Canon M6. So I've been using the Canon M3 as my main vlogging camera for the past year. A lot of you guys are on my channel because of my videos about the M3. I've been using it for about 2 weeks, and I have to tell you, I absolutely love this camera. So over the course of this video, you're gonna see a whole bunch of different features of the camera on display. I'm guessing at this point in the video, you've already seen some B-roll, which means you've seen me filming at 60 frames per second and slowing it down 40%. I used to do all of my slow motion either with my Canon G9X or my G7X Mark II when I upgraded, or with the GoPro sometimes, but now I'm able to get beautiful, creamy slow motion with this, which means I get access to all my nice lenses. Look at this golden hour. All right, I'm digging the light right now. I'm gonna get some time lapses. I'm gonna shoot some more with the 11-22, which is my main vlogging lens. That's what's on right now. I'm gonna shoot some with a 22mm f2 as the light comes down a little bit, show you how that works. And then once the light's completely gone, or pretty much gone, maybe blue hour, somewhere around there, I'll show you how the camera functions in lower light situations. Let's check it out. Let's do it. One thing that I noticed immediately upon using the M6, which is something a lot of people don't talk about, is the increased dynamic range. I think there's at least a full stop, maybe a stop and a half of extra dynamic range that the M3 doesn't have. So you get more detail in the shadows and in the highlights at the same time, which is terrific for a day like this. So the light's already completely covered in this area. So I'm not gonna be able to get a nice sunset over the water, but I'm gonna drive a little ways and see if I can't catch the sun somewhere where it's not hidden. Sunset's in about 25 minutes. I'm so out of shape. I've only been walking around for an hour and a half, and I'm just like totally out of breath, ready to take a nap. Run back to the car, drive 5 or 10 minutes to a spot where I think the sun won't be hidden by that hill or miniature mountain over there. I've been to Montana, so that's a hill. And I should be able to catch a nice time lapse for you. This guy with his window open in the car is staring at me. What's that guy doing? Did you see him look right at me? I waved as he stuck his head out the window. Okay, I found a spot where the sun hasn't set yet, as you can see. So you can actually see that it's lighting up that beautiful orange over there. I'm not sure if I should, like, facing this way, this isn't a very pretty view. Like, there's really nothing to see over here. Over here is just cars, and I don't know if it's better to shoot up that way because the pretty orange will kind of, you know, it'll fade as the sun goes down. I gotta make a decision soon though. All right, I'm gonna shoot this way. I'm gonna switch this over to the 22mm. Okay, so as you can see, I have set up, I did lose, unfortunately I lost some of the light. So I don't know how this time lapse is going to come out. I'm obviously filming this on my G7X. The camera is down here shooting that. So I'll let it go for 15-20 minutes and see what happens. I'm using the 22mm, which is the most beautiful lens for the of all the EFM lenses for the Canon's mirrorless system. I will say that using the 22mm with the M6 is such a dream because the dual pixel autofocus works amazingly. On the M3 you really weren't able to use People, the bus just stopped, so everybody's getting off. This is a park and ride that I'm like sitting in right now. So on the M3, you really weren't able to use the 22mm for video at all because the autofocus was just horrendous. You know, I mean, the M3's autofocus was like, it was okay, but it could not handle that bright f2 lens. The dual pixel autofocus of the M6 is just a dream, and it means I can actually use that amazing f2 lens. Although it would not be a good lens for walk around vlogging because 22mm is too close. It would be like this the whole time, which would be no good. Of course, the 22mm does not have any optical image stabilization, so again, not great for vlogging. How we doing, time-lapse? But Lindsay's on her way home from work, and I told her where I was, so she's gonna be here. I think she's gonna stop in the parking lot and say hello, so I may as well just let this keep rolling and wait till she shows up and then figure out what to do. I see a wife from afar. All right, I promised a low light test with the 22mm. I know it's loud because there's still cars, but the wife found me, and here she is.
I don't know what to do.
You just say hello and...
Hello.
Wow, the dual pixel autofocus is really... I know you don't know, but they know what I'm talking about.
I know.
These people.
I know what he's talking about.
The dual pixel autofocus is doing a phenomenal job. This is set on f2. It's all the way out at f2. Of course, I have to extend my arm as far as it goes. I've talked about that before. You can't use this lens for regular vlogging, but all things considered, if I needed a low light solution...
I think you're just making up words.
This is pretty awesome. All right, just a few more things about the M6 that I didn't have a chance to talk about or I forgot to mention yesterday when I was out getting all that B-roll for you. By the way, if you're new here, my name is Brian Miller. I'm a professional magician and motivational speaker, and on this channel, I do inspiration, tips, and tutorials for creative people just like you. So yeah, after using the M3 for a year as my primary vlogging camera, I finally upgraded to the M6. And the first thing I want to talk about is that word upgrade. A lot of people talk about this camera like it's just a step up from the M3, but this doesn't feel like an upgrade to me. This feels like a completely different class of camera. I don't feel like holding this the entire time I'm talking. Okay, so obvious things are obvious. There are a bunch of huge advantages to the M6 over the M3. The first, and probably the one that most people care about, is the dual pixel autofocus. Now, of course, having a better autofocus system is better for vloggers and YouTubers who are constantly filming ourselves. But one of the things that nobody's talking about is that having that autofocus system allows you to use this incredible 22mm f2 lens. This is far and away the best lens for the Canon mirrorless system. And it's not just having it... What the hell? Okay, the lighting just fell down. Stay. So of course having an f2 lens gives you the ability to shoot in much, much lower lighting conditions, and of course that also gives you that great bokeh, that background blur. But the problem on the M3 was that the M3's autofocus system, it wasn't advanced enough, it wasn't fast enough to keep up with how fast this lens is and how bright this lens is. Whenever I was in a lower light situation, the advantage I would gain by having the f2 lens will be offset by the fact that the camera was just constantly focus hunting. So it was pretty much unusable. And now with the M6, I can use this lens not just for the great background blur, but for the advantage of low light shooting. The build of the M6 is very similar to the M3, but all of the knobs feels just clicky and they're sturdy. They're really, really nice feel to them. And there's one extra knob that the M3 doesn't have, which is here, right underneath the exposure dial. This allows you to control one more function than you normally would have. On the M3, you could use your typical shutter control for a variety of different functions depending on what you were doing, but then you had to use the clicky wheel here at the back to do everything else and kind of mess around with the touchscreen if you wanted to change your ISO versus your aperture. But now, let's say you're shooting in manual, you can use your shutter here and you can do your aperture here and just use the clicky wheel for the ISO, which means you actually have 3 separate controls for the 3 main aspects of the exposure triangle, and that's terrific for people like me who shoot in manual mode. Of course, the M6 has the same basic problem that the M3 has, which is when you flip up the screen, you can't use a microphone on top and see yourself at the same time. But many of you are on my channel in the first place because of my external mic solution, which you can see right here. If you're not familiar with this and you're interested in how I set this up so that I can use a flip screen and a mic at the same time, link right there. I think you'll really enjoy this solution. It's very, very helpful. Of course, if we're talking about upgrading from the M3 to the M6, I can't not discuss having 60 frames per second. I like slow-mo, you like slow-mo, we all like slow motion. None of us are Peter McKinnon, but we're all trying to be these days. And being able to shoot in 60p means you can slow it down 40% for some really buttery smooth slow-mo. So there's a huge advantage to being able to shoot that 60p with the larger sensor and the access to better glass. Yes, the G7X Mark II shoots the 60p, and I'm very, very happy with the results I've had over the last year using the slow-mo from the G7X Mark II, but having the bigger sensor with the extra dynamic range, the image quality of the slow motion is just so much better, so noticeably better. And if you follow my channel, you've been watching the B-roll segments over the last 2 weeks of my vlogs, you might have unconsciously noticed that it looked better. That's because it's on this now, it's not on the G7X anymore. Lastly, of course, it's worth noting that this has a built-in time-lapse function. You have a lot of control over it, and it's beautiful having it take all the photos and then stitch together the movie for you in the camera. You can pretty much determine everything you want about the time-lapse. How many seconds in between shots, for how long do you want it to shoot, how long do you want the final time-lapse to be? Do you want it to lock the exposure from the first shot, or do you want it to re-expose for every shot? Here's one more time-lapse that I actually shot before doing this studio segment while I was waiting for my hair to dry. So occasionally I do want to use a time lapse, especially when I'm traveling in airports. It is great to show the passage of time when you have no other transition, especially if you're going to skip a few hours ahead in a vlog or whatever. And having it built into this, again, with the access to the nice lenses, with the bigger sensor, with the additional dynamic range, beautiful. All right, I think I've said all that I can about the M6. The question is, if you have the M3, is it worth upgrading to this? And the answer is absolutely yes, if you can afford it. Of course, if you can't afford it, you're gonna be really stretching your budget. Stick to the M3 for a while until you can afford this without killing yourself. I mean, yes, there's a ton of amazing options, but again, I used the M3 and built my channel from nothing up to the 33 or 3,400 subscribers that we have right now. I know that I'm still a small channel, but I did that with the M3, which I bought used for $300 at the time. You don't need to spend $800 or $900 to get this with the kit lens, or $1,000+ to get it with the 11 to 22, which is my main vlogging lens. You can go with the M3, but if you have the money, you're thinking about upgrading, and you're gonna sell the M3 after you upgrade, like I'm going to very soon, yeah, 100% get this. It's worth the investment, it's worth the money. I highly recommend it. Links to everything in the description of this video. If you enjoyed this, if it was helpful to you, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. I'm gonna be making a whole bunch of videos about the M6, including some low light test comparisons between this and the M3 in the next few weeks, so look out for those. Anyway, thanks so much, and always remember that our world is a shared experience. Have a great day.